Ethan Blake stood at the center of his opulent penthouse, glass of champagne in hand, his sharp eyes scanning the room. The soft hum of conversation and laughter filled the air, a soundtrack of wealth and influence. Around him, the city lights of New York glittered like a sea of stars beneath the towering windows. Tonight, he thought, everything was perfect. The finest caviar, crystal chandeliers, and guests whose names alone could make headlines. It was the kind of party that would be talked about for months. Ethan, however, was bored. All the flattery, the subtle nods of admiration, the polite laughter, it all felt routine. He needed something different, something shocking. A smirk crept across his face as he raised his glass, commanding attention without saying a word. Conversations slowed. Eyes turned to him, curious. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth, teasing. "Tonight, I thought I'd have a little fun." He paused, letting the suspense build. "I've invited someone very special." A few eyebrows raised. Whispers filled the room, speculative and excited. Who could it be? A celebrity, a business mogul, perhaps someone scandalous? Ethan let them guess, enjoying their anticipation. Then, seconds later, the doors to the penthouse opened. A hush fell over the room so complete it seemed to press against the walls. Ethan's smirk faltered just a fraction as a figure entered. Clara Wells. His assistant. Clara walked in as if she owned the space, her posture straight, her expression calm, yet carrying an air of quiet power. The elegant dress she wore shimmered subtly in the chandelier light, and her eyes swept across the room, meeting gazes with a confidence Ethan hadn't realized she possessed. The laughter, the chatter, the casual clinking of glasses, all of it vanished. Guests froze mid-sentence, mid-laugh, their eyes fixed on her. Even the seasoned socialites, the celebrities used to commanding attention, looked momentarily unsettled. And Ethan? He felt a strange tightening in his chest. This wasn't the reaction he had expected. For a moment, he thought maybe the room had mistaken her for someone famous, someone important. But no, this was Clara. His assistant. And in that silence, charged with tension and curiosity, the balance of the evening shifted completely. Ethan realized, just for a fleeting heartbeat, that tonight was about to change in ways he had never imagined. Ethan Blake had always carried himself with the confidence of a man who knew the world revolved around him. Tall, impeccably dressed, and with a smile that could charm or cut depending on his mood, he thrived on attention. His life was a whirlwind of board meetings, parties, and endless social events where power and influence mattered more than sincerity. Pranks and jokes were his way of keeping things interesting. Sometimes harmless, sometimes cruel, always unpredictable. He liked seeing reactions, especially when they were unexpected. People often underestimated him, but that was exactly how he wanted it. He enjoyed holding the cards. Clara Wells had been by his side for 2 years, quietly managing the chaos of his schedule, handling his demands, and smoothing over his missteps. She was intelligent, meticulous, and sharp, but she had learned early that the world, and Ethan in particular, rarely noticed subtle skill. Most people, including Ethan, assumed she was just the efficient assistant, the one who took notes, scheduled meetings, and ensured the office ran smoothly. Few realized how observant and capable she truly was. Clara had long ago mastered the art of blending into the background. Her quiet demeanor was not weakness, it was strategy. She listened, remembered details, and understood the rhythms of business in ways most executives did not. Loyalty was part of her nature, but so was ambition. No one knew that behind the calm exterior, she was building her own empire, one deal, one connection, and one clever decision at a time. Ethan, of course, was unaware. He often made jokes at her expense, teasing her in front of colleagues or at events, thinking it amusing to test boundaries. Clara never reacted outwardly. She simply smiled politely, letting his words roll off her like water off a shield. Inside, though, she catalogued every comment, every misstep, and every opportunity. She had a plan, though no one, least of all Ethan, knew what it was. Their dynamic was simple on the surface, boss and assistant. But beneath it, there was a tension that neither acknowledged. Clara was quietly formidable, and Ethan, in his arrogance, had yet to discover just how much power and influence she could wield when she chose to step into the spotlight. The guests shifted uneasily, whispers weaving through the crowd like a sudden wind. Curiosity flickered in their eyes, some smiling politely, others exchanging glances. A few laughed awkwardly, unsure whether the moment was part of Ethan's joke or something more serious. The room, once lively with chatter and clinking glasses, now carried a tense, expectant silence. Clara walked in, her steps slow, deliberate, yet effortless. The soft shimmer of her dress caught the light from the chandeliers, and for the first time that evening, all eyes were fully on her. She didn't rush to greet anyone or seek attention. Instead, she moved with quiet authority, her posture straight, her expression composed. Every detail of her presence seemed intentional, an unspoken declaration that she belonged there as much as anyone, if not more. Whispers grew louder. Some guests recognized her, others simply sensed the air of influence she carried. Someone murmured, "Isn't she?" while another shook their head, stunned. It became clear, bit by bit, that Clara was not merely an assistant. She was connected to ventures and companies no one had expected, ones with influence and power that rivaled the people in the room. Her presence wasn't accidental, it was deliberate, commanding. Ethan, standing near the center of the room with a glass still in his hand, felt a strange unease settling in his chest. This wasn't going as he had imagined. The laughter he had expected to follow his joke was gone, replaced with admiration directed at Clara. Eyes that had once looked at him with polite respect now lingered on her with genuine interest. Every word she spoke, every subtle nod and smile, carried weight. Guests leaned in to hear her, responding with attentive questions and thoughtful comments. Ethan realized the shift too late. His prank, meant to embarrass her, had completely backfired. Clara's intelligence, her quiet confidence, and her unassuming authority had stolen the room's attention. The man who had planned the joke now found himself awkwardly in the shadows of his own party, watching as the woman he had underestimated, his assistant, effortlessly became the center of admiration and influence. The chatter in the room had shifted completely. Guests gathered around Clara, drawn in by her calm confidence and sharp intellect. She spoke softly but clearly, effortlessly navigating conversations about investments, partnerships, and market trends. Every word carried authority. Investors leaned forward, socialites nodded with interest, and even the city's influential entrepreneurs seemed captivated. It was as if she had always belonged in this circle of power, and suddenly everyone could see it. Ethan tried to regain control. He stepped forward, raising his glass with a charming smile. "Well, Clara, I never imagined you'd take the spotlight so gracefully," he joked, expecting laughter. A few polite chuckles followed, but most eyes remained on her. The energy in the room had shifted, and his humor felt flat, even forced. His usual confidence faltered under the weight of the attention she now commanded. Then came the moment that sealed it. Clara, casually, in mid-conversation, referenced a high-profile merger, a deal in which she had played a critical, behind-the-scenes role. Her knowledge was precise, insider level, and she spoke with authority that left the investors visibly impressed. A few guests exchanged glances, whispers of admiration spreading like wildfire. Ethan felt a tightening in his chest. He had never imagined that the quiet, unassuming assistant he teased could wield such influence. Realization hit him hard. His prank, designed to embarrass her, had failed spectacularly. Clara wasn't just capable, she was remarkable. She had silently outshone him in front of everyone he wanted to impress. The room that had once hung on his words now hung on hers, and he could do nothing to reclaim the attention. Shock, humiliation, and/or mixed inside him. He watched as Clara answered questions with ease, guided conversations with subtle precision, and maintained an aura of grace that made him look small in comparison. For the first time in years, Ethan felt the sting of being underestimated, not by a rival, but by someone he had always considered beneath his notice. In that moment, he understood that Clara's strength wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, intelligent, and impossible to ignore once revealed. And Ethan, with all his charm and wit, had no choice but to witness it. The room slowly began to hum again, but the energy had shifted completely. Guests whispered in small clusters, exchanging impressed glances and murmured congratulations. Investors approached Clara with subtle nods, discussing potential opportunities and deals. Socialites smiled, intrigued by her intelligence and poise, and even the most influential figures in the room seemed eager to connect with her. She navigated each interaction with effortless grace, listening carefully, responding thoughtfully, never letting the attention overwhelm her. Ethan watched from the side, his glass now feeling heavier than it had all evening. He had always taken pride in his charm, his wit, his ability to control a room, but now every confidence he had relied on seemed to fade. He realized, painfully, that he had spent years underestimating the one person who had quietly been preparing herself to shine. Admiration mingled with regret in his chest. He had made jokes at her expense, never noticing the depth of her talent, the strength of her mind, or the sharpness of her insight. Clara noticed his gaze, but she didn't give him the satisfaction of a public reaction. A polite nod, a small, almost imperceptible smile, was all she offered. It was enough. Her quiet dignity spoke louder than any words could have. In that brief acknowledgement, she reminded him of everything he had overlooked: her intelligence, her ambition, her poise. She didn't need to prove anything. The room had already witnessed her brilliance. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, he understood that respect could not be demanded, it had to be earned. He had assumed Clara's loyalty and quiet presence meant she was beneath notice, but tonight had shown him otherwise. She had transformed from the background assistant into the center of admiration, and he had done nothing but watch. As he sipped his champagne, Ethan reflected on how little he truly knew her and how much he had missed. He could feel a quiet lesson settling deep in his mind. Underestimate someone at your own risk. Clara had shown him that power and influence often hid in plain sight, and that the most remarkable people were sometimes the ones you least expected. Clara moved through the room with effortless grace, her presence commanding attention even as she prepared to leave. She shook hands, exchanged polite words, and offered brief smiles, but there was no rush, no need for dramatics. The guests followed her with their eyes, some whispering in admiration, others quietly making notes to reach out in the coming days. Her every movement spoke of confidence, intelligence, and quiet authority, a reminder that her power had never been flashy, but it had always been real. When she reached the exit, Clara paused briefly. Her eyes met Ethan's, calm and unreadable. There was no triumph, no gloating, just the faint acknowledgement that she had proven herself. She turned and stepped out into the night, leaving the room suspended in stunned silence. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, as if released from a spell, the guests slowly began to resume conversation, the whispers of admiration now filling the air. Ethan remained where he stood, glass in hand, frozen in thought. The lesson was clear, and it struck deeper than any prank or joke could. Respect could not be demanded, and influence was not always loud. It was earned, quietly, deliberately, and sometimes in ways that went unnoticed until the perfect moment. He realized how little he had truly known Clara and how much he had underestimated her over the years. A small part of him wondered if he should apologize, if he should seek her collaboration, or at least acknowledge her brilliance in a meaningful way. But another part knew that Clara had already moved forward, that she had bigger plans, and that her journey was no longer tied to him. She had quietly taken her place among those who mattered, and Ethan's recognition, however sincere, could not change that. The city lights glimmered beyond the windows, the penthouse slowly returning to its previous rhythm of chatter and laughter. Yet Ethan could not turn away from the memory of her departure. The night had changed him, leaving him humbled and thoughtful. True strength, he realized, often lies in quiet confidence, and the cost of underestimating someone can be higher than expected. As the last echo of her presence faded, Ethan silently vowed to never make that mistake again.